Anybody, anywhere,
It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen.
This pass caught by Paulsen, the tight end.
And from 106.7 The Fan, Grant Paulsen.
Welcome into Take Command. You can watch us on the 106.7 The Fan and Team 980 YouTube channels. Of course, you can listen to this podcast wherever you get your audio, and please subscribe, rate, and review. Do us a favor and send the pod to a couple of friends so we can continue to grow it as the season goes on. That means a lot to us here behind the scenes. Logan, you are in Madrid. You've been busier than I thought as we've been working through the schedule here to do this pod. I mean, they're not messing around. They're getting their money's worth from Logan Paulsen over there.
Yeah, they definitely are. The whole crew's working really hard. I mean, obviously, like, we have our bunch of shows that we're doing, but then people are editing from hotel lobbies, and there's pictures of Tana sleeping in the lobby, getting ready to do a show. Like, this has been a little bit of a grind. I think tomorrow we have a little bit more time, I'm hoping. We have one or two things we got to do, and then Saturday, obviously. So probably check out some museums tomorrow, but have not been running around too much to really enjoy Madrid.
Did I see that you were a part with a bunch of the other former players with the team of some type of lesson you were giving kids or something today? What was that?
Yeah. So it was like an introductory thing to flag football here in Spain, and went to like a local, I don't know if it was a high school. They felt like middle school age kids, but there were high school kids that would come by and like watch. And just the environment, man, was incredible for a camp. Like, they had all the older kids watching from the perimeter of the field, and like, Tutty's doing dances and the crowd's cheering, going crazy, and every kid on the field wants every single person's autograph. Like, it was wild. And, you know, they all speak a little bit of Spanish and like English, and you're kind of trying to piecemeal conversations together. I mean, it was a really, I don't know. We'll see what the rest of the weekend holds, but rest of the week holds. But that's probably the highlight of the trip for me, man. It was really, really awesome. Like, teaching people how to hold a football, how to throw a football. They'd never seen one before. It was just, it was a really cool moment.
That's pretty amazing. All right, let's look ahead to the game with the Dolphins on Sunday, 9:30 a.m. East time kick, the morning window. Of course, it'll be 3:30 local time out there when the ball's in the air as the Commanders take on the Dolphins in what is going to be the first matchup between Marcus Mariota and Tua Tagovailoa. These two guys went to the same high school in Hawaii, St. Louis High School in Honolulu. It'll be the second time that two Hawaiian quarterbacks have ever gone head-to-head, because Dylan Gabriel and Tua Tagovailoa played earlier this season, just a few weeks ago in Week 7. But let's start. You've watched the film of Miami. You're getting ready for this game now with the Commanders' offense. They got the vertical passing game going a little bit last game and got out of their rut in that regard. Marcus Mariota, I think, was a key to that. Do you realize he's throwing deep passes, 10-plus air yards downfield at the highest rate of any qualified quarterback this year? 42.7% of his pass attempts have been 10 or more yards downfield. And that was definitely on display in Kansas City to Terry McLaurin, and then more recently here in this start this past week against Detroit.
That's kind of unbelievable to think about, honestly. You know what I mean? It's crazy to think. And I guess against Kansas City, a lot of those didn't hit. And then versus Detroit, more of those hit from a percentage standpoint. But, yeah, man, I think he's doing a great job. Like, I had to do a film breakdown for Coach's Show, which is the game plan show, which comes out on Sunday morning. And I was watching back, and I watched all his throws, and I was like, man, he's doing some really good stuff. Like, there's the play to lane, like where he kind of steps up. There's a subtle pocket movement. The rush gets high. He's helping the offensive line out. Really reads the concept out about as perfectly as you could read it out. It's Tampa 2, really excellent, post down the middle of the field. There's the extended play to Zach Ertz, and I got to give Josh Connerly a shout out, man. Does a great job kind of eating that Aiden Hutchinson spin move there. And I just thought, like, playmaking, like, he just had like a really nice feel for making plays from the pocket and being in time and on rhythm. And so, like, I think when people look at this offense, you're like, man, the offense seems to be doing better, than the defense in terms of handling injuries. And I'd say Marcus Mariota is a huge part of that. And I also say you got to give a lot of credit to the offensive line, which seems to be gelling each and every week that they play together, which is exciting.
Yeah, and they should, right? That's the healthiest kind of position group on the team. He traded a lot for Laramie Tunsil, who's been excellent. Chris Paul is their choice at left guard. He's not in because of an injury. And then you've got Biotish, who they paid $10 million to. Cosme was a fringe Pro Bowler. Connerly's a first-round pick. So they need to play really well. There's not really a good reason not to. But you're right. I think the continuity that they're getting is coming on strong. Back to Mariota for a second. I've been making this case this week because I really do believe this. It's not like everything's going well on offense. The run game still isn't clicking. They were averaging 14 points over a 3-game stretch before last week when they kind of broke out. And the receiving position, which we'll get into, has been problematic. But Mariota is giving them a chance to win. And I really do feel like, I think my tweet was something like, if their defense could just be a normal level of bad and not like what it's been the last month, they're going to win a lot of games because Mariota is playing like league average or so football. He's ranked, I think, 15th among qualified quarterbacks in EPA per dropback, essentially. And this is a stat where it's like Darnold and Dak and Goff and May and Jackson and Matt Stafford at the top of the league. It's a pretty telling stat. He's middling, for starters, I mean. So it's not like you're getting bad production by any means. And if they could just play a defensive game that allows them to hang around the way he's playing, I think you could win games. You could steal games.
Well, I think that's the thing that's been it's definitely frustrating about last week specifically, right? Is Marcus, I think, does enough. I think the run game, it's not excellent, but it's good enough, like they made enough plays. And I think, again, the only thing I would point to with the offense, and we've talked about this in the post-game show, I've talked about this on Command Center this whole week. The one thing I would point to is that they have struggled tremendously on third down. And so when your defense is struggling, right, I think, and again, the play, like, again, when you watch the cut up, when you go on the film, you watch the cut up of Marcus Mariota, you're like, man, that throw to Zach Ertz in the low red was tremendous. Tight window, anticipates it. Zach does a great job making that play. Touchdown to Debo is excellent. The touchdown, the ball to Treylon Burks in the first quarter is excellent. A really excellent ball placement, tight window throw. It's like, those are big time NFL throws. And I think the one thing that I would say about the offense currently is that it just doesn't possess the football the way you need to. Like, so just to compare it to last year, like they did such a good job on fourth down, on third down, of staying on the field, keeping the defense off the field. And even though I think the defense is a little bit worse this year from a talent standpoint, especially after the injuries, I think you feel them a lot more acutely because they're on the field more. They have to have more bites at the apple at stopping the team. And so I think in this situation, like, again, the offense is doing. People hear me say this and they think, oh, Logan thinks the offense is playing well. Is this team the Seattle Seahawks? Is it the LA Rams? No, it's not, right? But are they playing at a level like the right level of bad? I liked how you articulated that, to win football games. Yeah, I think they are, and I think that's kind of what I'm pointing to is like if they could even carry more of that burden, if they're just a touch better on third down, possessing the football. And again, like I go back to last game, and there were opportunities for them to go for it on fourth down. They're kicked out of those situations because of penalties. Versus the Miami Dolphins, you have to take every advantage, I think, because this is an explosive offense when we talk about the Miami Dolphins.
Here's a number I saw in Next Gen Stats I wanted your help contextualizing and to see why you think this is happening. When Mariota plays, he is blitzed 43% of the time on his dropbacks this season, which is the highest rate among 35 quarterbacks who have dropped back at least 100 times. So it's not to say that Daniels isn't getting blitzed a lot as well when he's in there, because he has been. Mariota, for the record, is handling it much better, over 8 yards per attempt compared to about 5 yards per attempt for Jaden. Having said that, Mariota is blitzed at the highest rate among any quarterback in the league. Is that an indictment on feeling like you can play man against these receivers and get more aggressive? Like, what do you think that is?
Yeah, I think that's more of an indictment of the offense in general at the moment, not necessarily Mariota specifically. I think, and also the people you're playing. I think Kansas City, they have a very high blitz percentage, specifically on third down, right? They played Detroit. They have a very high blitz percentage also. I don't know how much they actually blitzed in that game, though, but traditionally they blitz a lot. So I do think he's played. I think it's a couple things kind of creating that statistic. One, it's the teams that he's got his starts against. Two, it's the level of receiving talent they have where teams feel like they can just heat you up and play man. And I think all of those things kind of confound. And also, I do think, historically, Mariota's been a guy that you can blitz. He's going to hold the football a little bit. I think you see that in the Kansas City game. I think you see that at times in the Detroit game. And I think, there's a reason that he's not a top 15, top 17 quarterback in the NFL. It's because he holds the football. He doesn't always see it super well, but I think he's seeing it well enough right now. And so I think it's just all of those things kind of combine to make this weird that crazy. That's quite frankly, that's a crazy statistic if he's getting blitzed that much. But it makes sense when you kind of look at all the context factors.
All right, so then let's get to the run game, because it sounds like maybe you're at a better place with it, where you feel like either there was growth, or to your point, like there was some value in the quantity over the quality. What are you seeing? And things are muddy up front. There's no doubt. It's not like they're popping runs like they were with Bill early in the season. But if Rodriguez is healthy enough to play in this game, and you have Bill, looks like they've got a timeshare back between the two. You got what you wanted last week too, which was Rodriguez out of the chute to kind of get downhill and run into people, and then Bill as a change of pace and the speed after the punch, so to speak.
Yeah, and so what I'd say is, like, yes, it's not maybe super clean like with free runners, but they are seeing more heavy boxes when you get in heavier personnel, which I think was the right move last week. It's not going to be always super clean. Like everyone thinks, oh, you pack it in, bring it in nice and tight. Like that works in high school, works in college a little bit too, because corners and safeties aren't as good at tackling. But in the NFL, everyone's a good tackler. So like when you bring that and condense that formation, you're bringing the safeties in tighter, you're bringing the corners in tighter. So the margin for error gets a little bit smaller, right, on both sides of the ball, right? So if you kind of break through that first line, it could be a big explosive play because there's nobody behind you. But also everyone's in closer proximity, so that corner fits the run a little bit quicker. The safety's a little bit more downhill. And so I think that's probably one of the reasons why it felt that way last week. And I think it shows that delicate tightrope that every offensive coordinator must negotiate. And like, I want to be in my best personnel grouping, which in this case is probably 12 or 13 personnel, depending on the health of the receivers each and every week. Like I think when Treylon Burks is in there, I'm starting to feel better about that group. Obviously this week versus Miami, it's going to be a little bit different ball game. But I do think that that's something that I want to see negotiated. Like when you talk to Fletch, for example, he's like, we want to run the football, be in heavy personnel, 3 yards on a cloud, that's every time. The problem with that is you're going to be in 4th and 1 a lot if you do that. So are there ways, again, to be more efficient in the run game through formation, through personnel, through run design, right? I think Cliff, I liked some of the things I saw last week in terms of changing his run design, which was great. And then, again, the big thing here is converting on third down, getting the back more opportunities, getting the defense tired, letting them run into tired defenses. I think that's a big thing too. So I think all of those factors have to kind of combine to support the rushing attack. I do think, however, that this week versus Miami, I don't want to say it's a get-right spot because they played that defensive front for Miami played really, really well against Buffalo. But over the course of the season, they've been a little bit lackluster. Jordan Phillips I think he's going to be a good player, but he's a rookie kind of figuring it out. The Zeke Biggers is one of their interior guys. He's also a rookie. He's big, strong, long player, but kind of figuring it out. Kenneth Gratt is a rookie, big, heavy dude, first-round pick, trying to figure it out. Like you see the athletic upside with all those guys, but they're young football players. And so when you see teams, especially early in the season, there's creases, they get gashed, they're not setting hard edges, a lot of the issues that Washington was having. So I'm not saying this is a get-right spot. I just think it's maybe a little bit easier for some of the veterans in the front. Like I think about Biotish versus Kenneth Gratt, or I think about Laramie Tunsil versus Jordan Phillips. Like I think those are matchups that they can physically win. And I think they can win. It just depends on whether Anthony Weaver kind of adopts some of these stylistic approaches that other teams have brought with a ton of movement, a ton of pressure on first and second down. And if I'm Anthony Weaver, I'm probably going to throw that pitch and see if we can hit it. If we can't hit it, I think we're going to see it a lot more. And then obviously the runs will stay messy. The run looks will stay messy over the course of the game.
Something I wanted to bring up on the pod, you referenced, I think, last week at some point. It does seem like Dan Quinn has started to get more aggressive on 4th down again. And I know that some of this is down in distance and kind of just the luck of the draw, where like, okay, are you across the 50 on a 4th and 4 fewer, either in no man's land or like at the plus 40 or something like that. And there just might not be game sequences where that's the case. But even, a year ago, there were times in minus territory on 4th and very short where he would roll the dice. And it's what I think the league is trending toward, and it's what I love. What I wondered last year constantly is Dan Quinn adapting to the times in this way where he's actually this gambler who loves going for 4th down like he's Dan Campbell? Or is the offense so good and Jaden Daniels so electric and unbelievable right now that he just has confidence in this player to get the first down? And it seems like it was B, not A. Because early this season, and again, some of it's sequence, but they really didn't go for many at all. If you look at the 4th down attempts at the beginning of the year, they had a total of 7 in their first 6 games. Now, over the last 4 games, they've gone for 9 fourth downs, including at least 2 in every game and 5 over the last couple of weeks. They were 3 for 3 against the Lions. Sometimes that's because you're chasing a game, whatever. But I'm just curious for your thoughts on that. It seems like to me, with some of the precincts reporting here, last year was less what Dan Quinn's going to be as a fourth down thinker and more the offense is humming and Jaden's on the field and nobody can stop him.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And honestly, one that I don't know if we've talked about it, but one that was on my mind earlier this year, specifically when I thought, oh man, that's maybe something they would have gone for last year. So I don't know if I have a good answer for you. I do think that, if Logan Paulsen is the coach, like I'm going to be a little bit more aggressive on fourth down. I think, that's just something I think is the right thing.
What's
to
your
do.
logic? You mean just generally, like the way of the league now?
Yeah, just generally, I know everyone kind of has, oh, you're plus 45, like you should go for it, like blah, blah, blah. I mean, I'm even thinking it's probably more aggressive than that at this point, right? With the new kickoff rules and like you kicking field goals, from really far out, like you see some of these 58, 60-yard field goals, like you're just giving the opportunity for the offense to get the ball at the 40-yard line and go score. Like, and I think like when you look at the analytics of defense, like it's something crazy. Like you get the ball inside the 10, there's like a 10% chance you're going to score. If you get the ball inside the 20, it's like a 12% chance. And then when you get to the 40, it's like a 35 or 45% chance you're going to score. And so obviously I think those analytics can lie to you, but I think that paints a picture of a scoring landscape at the moment. So with the kickoff return rule being what it is at the moment, like I think you just want to be, anytime you're thinking about kicking a field goal and it's fourth and short, fourth and moderate, fourth and 4, fourth and 5, like I'm giving a lot of thought to going for it because again, like you're just basically giving them a 45% chance of scoring a touchdown if you kick a field goal there.
No, makes sense. Checks out. One other area of the offense we haven't really talked about, but has been an issue for them and they're trying to still improve in is at wide receiver where Terry McLaurin's not going to play in this game again. So for McLaurin, he's missed after this weekend 7 of his last 8 games. Deebo Samuel has not quite been the same, in my opinion, since the early part of the year. You can kind of look at the first 5 games versus the last 5 games for him as 2 different years. Are you seeing a difference in usage like we've talked about, you want to get him the ball with a head of steam and you want to get him the ball in the right matchup. It just seems to me like the explosiveness isn't quite there. Is it a heel thing or am I seeing this wrong?
I think it's probably both. You know what I mean? I think like there was the Chicago game where it's like, man, like he doesn't look quite right. He took the week off prior, not the week off. He was hurt obviously, and he didn't play. And I think the heel was still kind of lingering for him. But I think the last time you saw him look really, really explosive was in the Atlanta game when he was healthy, right? And so I think there's a couple of things going on. One, I think, is his health. I think the other thing is like the utilization has shifted slightly. Like you see him, you used to be really prolific at getting him these screens and these bubbles and these quick nows and things like that. He did a great job of maximizing those touches. And obviously recently that hasn't been the case. So I think it's a little bit usage, a little bit health. I think a little bit just general flow of the offense. Like, we talked about how efficient Marcus has been throwing the football. But again, like that lack of third down, like you mentioned it on the last show we did. And I think it's a really astute observation. If you can't convert third downs, it just prevents you from getting touches for everybody, right? The backs don't get touches. They don't get quality touches. The receivers, they don't get as many touches as you want. And so, Marcus throws for 200 yards, and I'm like, man, that's a pretty solid performance, but he's only got 16 completions in that game. I think he's got like 22 or 23 dropbacks. Like, it's just not a high volume passing attack. There's like 27 rushes or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but it's just not a lot of plays. And I think that's something that that's to me the biggest underlying metric for the running backs, the passing game. And again, obviously Deebo's health is a factor there, no doubt. But I think it is multifactorial when you look at the landscape of this team and this offense. It's not just one thing saying, oh, he's not healthy or the utilizations has changed. Those two things are true, but I also wonder if they're on the field the way that they think they're going to be on the field, the way they were against the Giants, against the Raiders, against Atlanta, against LA. Like that's when the offense felt poppy and explosive and dynamic, but they're getting first downs. So I think that's also part of why the usage feels different at the moment.
Yeah, there were games early in the year in that stretch I'm referencing where he had 10-plus targets multiple times, 8-plus targets 3 times. And over the last few weeks, it's been pretty normal to see 5 targets and 4 catches, and that can be a snap count thing. I guess what I'm talking more about is just when he has the ball in his hands.
Yeah, I think that's probably more injury related.
His yards per
like
catch right now are 8.6. His career low is 11.3. And when he was an all-pro in 2021, it was 18.2. Now, I don't expect that guy to walk through the door, but it's just not quite what it was early in the year, and that number's going down is all.
And also, I do think he was being – I think back to the LA game because that was the last kind of big game for him. Bubble screens, great. Little quick whatevers, great. But also, he got a bunch of deep high crosses. He catches the explosive touchdown versus Atlanta. That's not been in the repertoire really. And again, he's not a guy to me when you watch him who's overly nuanced as a route runner. He kind of gets by on some of those more just horsepower routes. And so if the horsepower is off, the motor's not tuned up to 100, you're going to have a hard time separating. So I do think that is a part of it, no doubt. But I also think it's just the offense as a whole is not where it needs to be to support his production too. So I think he's probably a little bit nicked up, probably not feeling 100%. I think the offense needs to be more productive. I think also going through multiple quarterback changes is going to affect that too. It's just there's a lot of variables here that are going to make it hard for them to maximize him, and hopefully they get back to that because I think the offense, again, like you said, it's a little bit of a canary in the coal mine. When he's getting his touches and his targets, the offense produces well because they find an explosive element, and so hopefully they can get back to that.
Yeah, when they were really good early in the season, he was their best weapon, and it felt like things were going through him. He, by the way, could tie his catch total from last year with a 5-catch game. He's on the brink already in 6 fewer games of having as many catches as he had all of last year. But he's 275 yards away from that number. So I mean, he's a PPR maven. He's catching the football.
Yeah.
But you want more chunks and explosives and yards, and some of that's usage. But you're right. If they have more plays, maybe they can run some of the stuff that was working earlier in the season. I guess if I'm going to, call one guy out whose arrow's going down, I'll give one guy credit whose arrow's going up. And it's been up all year. But Laramie Tunsil, I saw this today, EPA per run by gap. So off left tackle for Washington's been their most effective way to run the football, and it's not particularly close. Off right guard is kind of number 2 if you break down their gap structure on EPA per run. But the Laramie Tunsil trade's been a gigantic win for them. We talked a lot early in the year about Marshawn Lattimore and maybe being a bet that didn't go as well. When you're losing, a lot of people are going to point out a lot of the things that aren't going to plan, and I understand that. I'm not telling anybody they shouldn't. But the Tunsil trade's a win, man. He's been great in pass protection, and we had heard he's this white-collar player who's good in the run game, but he's not nasty or whatever. He's been really effective. He looked at the numbers in the run game as well.
Dude, him and Chris Paul, man, watching them each week is a treat, man, in terms of their ability to double team and get vertical and move people off the spot. And, Laramie, he's always been a good player. I played with him in Houston in 19, and I was always blown away with the consistency of his pass set, the strength of his hands, the feel for the rusher as a pass protector. And I knew he was a very good run blocker, but I thought, it was more kind of outside zone, perimeter stuff, pulling him outside. But to see him in the gap stuff and just his quickness, and he does this thing which is really hard to teach, right before contact, just sinks his hips a little bit, unroots the defender. I mean, he's a special football player. So to me, I know that was a high price to pay for him, but again, I go back to you just do not find franchise left tackles anywhere outside of the top 15 picks in the draft because they don't come up in free agency. If a guy is showing anything in free agents as a free agent, he's got the potential to be a free agent for a team. They re-sign him. Look at Orlando Brown. He's a middling tackle at best, but he gets paid year on year because it's so hard to find effective people at that position. One of the reasons I was always calling for draft a tackle high, draft a tackle high, draft a tackle high, as opposed to someone that's position agnostic that has guard tackle flexibility, is because the upside and value for a left tackle is so awesome. So when I see a guy like Laramie Tunsil on this team, I'm that's fantastic for this roster. That's fantastic for this offensive line. And then the fact that they took that 29th pick and found a developmental upside guy in Connerly, who's also, after last week, I mean, he's a little bit streaky because he's a young player, but last week I thought had a very solid performance. You saw the athleticism. You saw him sitting down some stuff from a power rusher and Aiden Hutchinson and doing a good job with that. think about those two guys playing together and what that could mean for the rest of those guys in the interior. Like, this could be a really special group once they kind of get healthy, get galvanized. And I think, again, it speaks to that Laramie Tunsil point, like why that acquisition was so incredibly important.
Yeah, he's going to be due for a payday, looks like, this offseason. All right, next, let's get to the defensive side of the ball. The Commanders tuning up for Mike McDaniel's Miami Dolphins offense and Tua Tagovailoa. That's next on Take Command. Welcome back to Take Command with Logan Paulsen, who played 10 years in the NFL. I'm Grant Paulsen. You can check me out on 106.7 The Fan each and every day, 2 to 6:30. Logan, I want to get to the Commanders' defense against the Dolphins' offense in this matchup. Miami comes in ranked 16th in yards per play. They're 10th running the football. They're 22nd passing the ball. They turn it over a lot. Tua is second to last in the league in interception percentage. They don't give up a lot of sacks. Time to throw is generally lower for them. They're just outside the top 10 at avoiding sacks, but they don't stay on the field very much. 29th in first down ratio. And if you look at third downs, they're bottom half of the league, fourth downs, middle of the league. When you look at this offense, they've lost Tyreek Hill. They've dealt with some injuries. Tua's been on the precipice of being benched multiple times. He's actually been benched in game at points this season because of the giveaways. What do you see?
I mean, this is going to sound crazy, but I see an offense that on first and second down is about as well designed as it could possibly be. Like the way they use motions, the way they use formation, the way they use misdirection in the backfield, different backfield sets, different action from the quarterback. Like if you're like a football nerd, like it's just a fun offense to watch from that standpoint, right? And then I think the first thing out of people's mouths is like, well, why isn't it more effective? The problem is like all of that stuff on first, second down is great, but if you get two things, one, they're not overly physical in the front on the offensive line, so they can't like run at you. Everything's kind of perimeter, everything's kind of smoke and mirrors. And so when you play defenses that are disciplined, locked in, gap sound, trust their keys. So we're reading guards, we're reading fullbacks, we're not looking at the quarterback, we're not looking at the backfield so much. Like they kind of get hit in the teeth a little bit. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that's part of it. And I think the other thing is like all this design doesn't really matter if you're in third and long, right? So you said their third down efficiency was, I forget, it was something like kind of bottom of the pack, right? 26, 27, something. And I would say like a lot of that is because like sometimes you just got to rely on the quarterback to make you right in those situations. You got to have playmakers to put you in the right position. So and all this stuff they do on first down to hide the offense, hide the limitations, that becomes fully exposed on third down, right? So the offensive line isn't playing super well. I think I like Patrick Paul. That's obviously Chris Paul's brother. I think he's doing a great job for them at left tackle, second-year player. Jonas Sonavaia from Arizona is struggle busting bad. Like he is just struggling in pass protection. He's struggling in the run. Aaron Brewer, the center, is doing fine. But then there, Cole Strange, who was the first-round pick, the surprising first-round pick up in New England, struggling down there. And Larry Braun is playing fine. It's just he's a right tackle. And so what I'd say is like it's on first down, second down, you don't really feel any of that offensive line issue. And then you get to third down and it's like fully on display. The other thing too is like on third down, Tua's got to read it out, right? On first, second down, they do a great job designing drifts and finding these holes and creating space with formation and motions. And Tua's like literally, it almost feels like he's closing his eyes and throwing to a spot. Like he's going to throw to that spot come hell or high water. And I think that's some of the reasons there's a lot of turnovers, but also like this team is not built to be executing on third down, basically is what it is. And so first, second down, they're going to give you everything you can handle. And then third down, if you can get them in a third and long, like it's your time to win and make Tua beat you. And I don't think he can do that consistently.
I want to talk Tua in a second, but I think the conversation on this offense has to be centered around Devin Achane because he's one of the most explosive, dynamic players in the league, and he's coming off of a hell of a performance. I mean, I saw the numbers, and then you watched it, and you're like, oh, my God. Like, I wonder why Buffalo had no chance. He just decided that day he was the best player on the field. It was his sixth career 150-yard scrimmage performance with at least a touchdown going back to being drafted in 2023. The only players in the league with more than that are Barkley, Henry, and Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, that's the type of talent we're talking about. He's forced 56 missed tackles this season on his touches, which is third most in the NFL. So you better bring a group if you're going to get him to the ground. But the numbers this week, he ran for $174 and 2 tutties. He had 6 catches for 51 yards. He's got at least 6 catches in back-to-back games. I mean, this might be the best pass-catching back in the league. He had a 92-yard game early this year. There's like shades of Kamara in his prime in that regard. But he's averaging, 5.5 yards a carry and closing in now on 1,000 yards for the first time. What makes him so good? What do you see from Achane, and what problems is the 24-year-old from Texas A&M going to present?
Yeah, I mean, he's a heck of an athlete, I think, first and foremost. And so people see the really fast 40 time, they see the explosiveness. I think he's got he's close to the combine record for fastest running back ever. And that shows up. He's a track guy. He ran track, I think, at A&M for a little bit. And people think, oh, he's a track guy, but he is a runner. He is a running back.
Just to back that up, he ran a 4.32, bro.
Yeah, he's got gas. And so you see that. He's got gas. So there's Maxwell Hairston, he ran the 4.31 this last year at the combine. There's a run that breaks out to the offensive right, kind of at the 40-yard line, going into score against Buffalo. And Maxwell Hairston is the guy that's got the pursuit angle on him. And Achane just drops it into another gear and says, all right, bro, I see your 4.31. I'm just going to dust that thing real quick. And so that's the kind of, that to me is this is a Grant Paulsen runner we talked about, right? Guys that are explosive, guys that can hit the home run. He does that, man, about as well as anybody in the NFL, right? I think you're going to be hard-pressed to find someone that can hit a home run the way he can hit a home run. He's in the same speed category as Jahmyr Gibbs. So if you give this guy any kind of space, he's going to kill you. And then the other thing that he does really well, I said that he's a fast guy, but he is a good runner. He's got great vision. He's got good balance. He's tough. He's not a big guy, but he can get downhill a little bit. And he's perfect for what they want to do in this offense, right? It's here, we're going to use misdirection. We're going to find hats at the perimeter. We're going to create an alley off the tackle. And he can get there. There's plays where, they're running basically back offset to the left, outside zone to the right, which doesn't usually happen because the back's not fast enough to kind of catch up to the outside zone, and they can run it with him. And so not only are they using him as a great runner, and he's hit a couple of big plays as a runner, but I think in the screen, how many catches did he have last week, Grant? It felt like he had about 10. Maybe that's
it was 6. I think one got called back via penalty, but it's 12 catches the last 2 weeks, and it feels like every bit of it. And
so again, they use him on screens, they use him on little kind of quick little checkdowns and stuff. And so when you say that's the thing that makes the offense go, I think you're 1,000% right. Because if he's efficient, you are in for a hell of a day, right? Because everything they do off of play action is just at your fingertips. So as I was speaking, I got a little sweaty because I was thinking about what the Detroit Lions did. And while there's very different offenses stylistically, the foundational principle is the same. They want to run the football, make you stop the run, and then they are going to absolutely eviscerate you with stuff to Jalen Waddle in and behind that linebacker level, which the Commanders have had a very difficult time with the last couple of weeks.
So this is what's petrifying about this matchup, right? All along, the gauntlet was going to be brutal, but then you get the Dolphins on the other side, and there's no doubt it's a leveling down in competition, specifically in terms of quarterback play. The way Darnold's playing, I know that's people will laugh at that, but he's playing at an elite level. Then you've got Holmes, who's awesome, right? You've got Goff, who's an MVP candidate, comparable numbers to Stafford right now. Well, so Tua is going to keep you in the game, and he's going to make a couple throws that are going to make Mike McDaniel want to bang his head against the wall, and that's the difference. But in terms of Achane and the run game, especially without Daron Payne suspended for a pretty foolish moment where he punches a guy in the middle of the field, now you've got no Daron Payne, who I think's been their best player on defense this year. Now, they're not necessarily going to come down right at you, but you're still outside zone, stretch stuff in this Shanahan offense, and then you're setting up play action off of it. I don't know.
But that's the thing, Grant. One of the things is the strength of this team is on the interior, right? The Commanders. But one of the issues that's plagued them since probably Dietrich Wise has been out is no one can set an edge. And so this team is going to attack your edges. So one of my buddies is a player down there. He sent me the playbook, kind of walking through some stuff. They have about 1,000 different ways to run outside zone, all sorts of different combinations with the fullback and the tight end, and we're pulling the tackle. Whoever's playing end this week, you better be ready to go. Because if we don't get good edges in the run game, we might as well just go back to America and just call it a day, right? We have to set good edges in the run game. We have to keep it bottled up, because the second that thing stretches a little bit, I was talking to Fletch about this, and I think one of the things that has been Kinlaw's superpower, he's a great penetrator. I think Duran's been a great penetrator. Early in the season, they were much more effective, and I was like, why would that be? What is the reason? And the only thing I come up with is that guys were just setting better edges. So when you penetrate and you set a good edge, that penetrator can make the tackle. If we penetrate and we don't set a good edge, like we just outrun that guy and we just run to grass. And then all of a sudden, your guys inside, Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu, who are more downhill players anyway, have to fill bigger gaps. And I think that's, again, like one of the things that has really stuck out to me is like the run fits have been poor this year, really poor, and it's frustratingly so. And last year they weren't great either, but you didn't feel them because you could at least set an edge and condense the front so you get back in there. So to your point, like who's playing defensive end this week? Like you better come with every ounce of physicality you possibly can muster, and let's not let them get to the perimeter. Because if that, I'll tell you this. I was talking to Fletch today, and I was like, if they hit a 10-yard run on the first play of the game, I am going to be so depressed because that is, I think, indicative of a lot of things that could be happening for the rest of the game, like you just alluded to.
In reference to, you're saying what I think you're saying, right? Like the idea being they're going to try to stretch you out. They're going to move. If you can't set that edge, it opens up everything for them because now they got play action. They're going to boot and waggle off of it. By the way, you mentioned who's going to play end. So it's a lot of Jacob Martin, who has done a very good job.
He's done a good job.
But they need probably more out of him setting an edge. Von Miller was brought in here to rush the quarterback. He wasn't brought in here. I'm just being real. He was not brought in here to stop the run, and now he's being asked to stop the run. So that in and of itself is going to be a little bit of a mismatch issue. Preston Smith gives you size. They signed him off the street, has not made much of a statistical impact. You could tell me what you see on tape. And then Jalen Holmes was, I think it was last week when he was deactivated against the Lions, which I didn't understand at all. Like, that's a guy to me that absolutely needs to be. I need his size, if nothing else, on the edge just to try to set things outside. Like that did not make sense to me when he was.
So let me just say this. So I got lit on fire in the post-game show for saying this, but I'm going to give you some more context here. Not our post-game show, but the team's post-game show. So basically what I think they did last week, or what they wanted to do with Sheldon Day, is play kind of, because I think Sheldon Day is actually pretty good at stopping the run on the interior, right? Even though he's not like this tall, angular body.
Last year, he was really good, I thought, actually.
Yeah, and so I think he's been good. So you bring up Goldman, he can play inside, Payne's inside, and they've been putting Kinlaw more at like that big end spot, which I don't think is a terrible idea. Like, he's big and athletic enough, and I actually think he does better attacking gaps a little bit farther away from the guards. So we talked about that earlier this year. And so Jacob Martin was playing the weak side. Frankie Louvu was playing the overhang. Kinlaw's playing kind of the end spot. And then it was like Deron Payne, Sheldon Day, and Goldman on the interior. And then when Payne got ejected from the game, all of a sudden that game plan, which you had developed, now Kinlaw's got to move back inside. And it wasn't every play, but it was enough where it's like that was probably pretty disruptive to the plan. And again, Bram brought this up. It's like it was already 17-0 or 21-0 at that point. So how much of an impact did that really make? But I do think that was kind of the plan in terms of deactivating Jalen Holmes last week, because you get a more physical body type on the perimeter. Now, can they do that? Is that in the cards? I know they just signed that kid from Cincinnati. I'm going to look up his name real quick, but he is a big run stopping end. So I'd be curious if he would be up this week. DeMarcus Walker, he was in Chicago last year for a little bit. He's like 6'4", 285, 290 pounds.
What
very
they need, honestly,
wise.
they need size. That's what they need. They need a big. But that's why I hated the Holmes thing. That actually is. That makes more sense than anything I've heard. Like, that was their plan, maybe. Now, to your point, I would say the Bram thing. Like, the plan wasn't going great so far. But yes,
shout out to Bram.
Yes, exactly. The plan wasn't going well, and then the second plan didn't go well. But yeah, I want Holmes up because I need size on the edge, and whether it's him, Walker, doesn't matter. Like, they just need bigger bodies, and they need
on
to
first
not
and
have,
second down.
Exactly.
Like, not all the time, but like think about, like, I just think about Dietrich, and again, he was like I always thought he was a good player, but then watching what he did, like in the Giants game, early on in that before he got hurt, obviously versus the Packers, like, he was a big part of this thing. You know what I'm saying, and why they were successful. And so not having that body type out there, I think, has really, really hurt them. So however they get that edge setting presence on first and second down, let Vaughn rush the passer, get him out of that first and second down role. Like, as much as I love Preston Smith and love playing with him as like when I played with him here in Washington, I think he's not a super physical run defender. Like Dietrich Wise was the kind of guy, like as a tight end, where like I would get like spinal tinglings with every collision that I had with him, right? Preston Smith doesn't want to play that game, right? He doesn't want to like have CTE for the rest of his life. Some guys like, yes, he likes to use length. I want somebody who's going to come in and make it a car crash. And so do we have a body type like that on the team? Like, I'd like to think so in terms of some of these acquisitions. So to your point, I'd like to see some of that this week against Miami.
Yeah, I think that's well said. The other thing I'll point out about the D-line really quickly is the only way that this was going to work, because it was a little bit of a curious way to put it all together this offseason. But what I ended up coming around to at training camp and really liking, and I remember talking about it on the pod in one of our early shows with you, was that Adam Peters had built this like big league bullpen where he had a bunch of guys who had varied roles. Well, when you lose 2 or 3 of your key relievers in your bullpen, now nobody gets to execute just their role. Right. So the lefty who's supposed to face only lefties is now pitching the 8th inning against 3 righties, right? Yeah. And that's happening with Von Miller. It's happening, frankly, for everybody. And no wonder the results have obviously been worse. I do want to bring up really quickly Jalen Waddle, because this is quiet, I think. It's a sneaky thing. But he's been one of the most productive receivers in the NFL since the Tyreek Hill injury. He has gone from being their distant number 2 to their clear number 1. And it's not quite Smith and Jigba-esque, but it's not that far off. Last several weeks, 84, 82, 99, 95, 110 yards for him. He has been very consistent. That is a matchup problem for a Washington team that has struggled with prolific receivers. You now have Trey Amos out for the season. So at the cornerback position, you're down to Mikey, who they want to keep in the nickel, I guess. And then Jonathan Jones on the outside with maybe some version of like Noah Igbenogany and Antonio Hamilton. So it's getting very, very thin at corner now as you take on a really good wideout.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you brought up Jalen Waddle because I think he's good, man. I don't know. He doesn't get a lot of pub, doesn't get a lot of headlines. And I also think that Mike McDaniel, coming from Kyle Shanahan, the one thing Kyle was excellent at doing was like when he had a playmaker, he knew how to get that dude the ball. Like you see that up in San Francisco now. But like I think about like that, what was that, 2013 season with Pierre Garçon where he broke the receiving record for the team. Like if you couldn't get open, they're going to find a way to get you a touch. And that's what Jalen Waddle's doing. And the thing that's scary about him is Pierre was a beast. Like Pierre's one of my favorite people I ever played with. Loved how he played. Loved how he played the receiver position, but kind of a bruising wideout. Jalen Waddle's like a 4.28 guy. You know what I mean? So when he gets touches, it's like, hold your breath, man. Hold your pearls. Like this is going to be gnarly. And he's made that happen a couple times this year. So I think that's something that freaks me out. Also, just to shout out Greg Dulcich. He's a guy that I worked with in the draft a couple years ago, been hurt. They have maximized him 100%. He's like a 4.5 tight end who's like a 6'3", 245-pound body type, but he has been crazy explosive for them in the pass game the last couple of weeks too. So it's kind of been, A-Chain, Waddle, Greg Dulcich the last couple of weeks, and you see this offense starting to come to life with kind of this horizontal element that was not great earlier in the year, but now because you've got guys like Dulcich, guys like A-Chain, guys like Waddle, guys like Dwayne Eskridge, quite frankly, like they can take those little short dink and dunks and maximize the yards after catch. So, I know Dan Quinn's calling the defense, and I think his experience will help a little bit, but this is not an easy out. And especially with how they've been playing the last couple of weeks, like I'm really not sure what the course of action is other than we need to get our run fits cleaned up. We need to get our communication in the back end cleaned up. We can't give up explosive plays. We cannot do it. We need to tackle better. And I don't know, like a different person calling the plays, I don't know if it affects that, right? It's really like the preparation in the week and how you make sure this group's ready to roll.
I want to get to something you just said about Dan Quinn in our final segment coming up. By the way, the Dolphins, 2 wins in their last 3 games with 30 or more points in both, by the way. They got a 34-10 win over the Falcons and a 30-13 win over the Bills. Now, the meat in that sandwich was a blowout loss to the Ravens, but that's 2 of their last 3 where they've won by a lot and they've scored over 30. So they're playing way better football, and that's why they're favorited in this game on a neutral site in Madrid. All right, we'll wrap things up next with who's going to eat. I got the one burning question for Logan as well. Let's take them in. Welcome back to Take Command. Logan Paulsen and Grant Paulsen. This pick segment is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. If Chris Rodriguez goes, which he's back on the practice field, and I'm hoping it's trending in that direction, I like his over in rushing yards. It's been set pretty low because the total of carries for him recently has not been high, but I think his role is going to continue to evolve. You saw that they wanted to get him the football before his injury last week, and he was pretty effective. He's been their most efficient runner over the last several weeks. So if you can find a total in the 20s on Chris Rodriguez rushing yards, I think that's something they will go over this week with him if he could stay healthy and get back on the field.
No, I think that's 100% right. And we've been calling for Chris Rodriguez the last couple of weeks just to kind of keep you on base, keep you on schedule. And look about the Atlanta game. He's popped some big runs for them. And so if he can kind of find one of those explosive chunks, get a little bit of a rhythm, I love that actually. Yeah.
Once again, that's your pick segment brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. I'm a FanDuel guy. Have a lot of fun with FanDuel on Sundays, so enjoy that. All right, Logan, before we let you go, I do want to ask you this last question. The numbers, and I won't go through all of them, but Dan Quinn against Shanahan offensive teams, his defense against those offenses, historically now, but certainly over the last several years, have not been good. And this really gets traced back to him against LaFleur in the playoffs when he was calling plays for Dallas. It's been the same, though, here in Washington. Doesn't matter who the Shanahan disciple is, if it's LaFleur, now you've got McDaniel, variations of that with McVay and others. Why is it? Is it a coincidence? I mean, it's a lot of games, big sample now, that this defense seems to have a really hard time with that offense.
Yeah, I don't really have any inside baseball on that, but I do have a hypothesis, and my hypothesis is that one of the things that Kyle and that whole tree is so good at is they learn the rules of the defense really well. They kind of learn the intent of the defensive coordinator. And I think with Kyle, having worked with Dan for a long period of time and kind of understanding his defensive philosophy, that is the worst thing you want to do as a defensive coordinator is work with Kyle. And then they all those guys kind of have a similar methodology for breaking down defenses. And one of the things that Dan does, he plays a lot of man. His default pitch is cover 2 or Tampa 2, which is a great default pitch if you want to kind of a change up, and then they get into cover 3. So if I have any kind of pre-snap indicator, if I'm Kyle, Sean, LaFleur, Mike McDaniel, on what I think they're going to be in and down and distance what they're going to be in, those dudes having been in those offenses or versions of those offenses, they have an answer for all that stuff. So I think that's one of the reasons why is they have really clear solutions. They have a really clear understanding. And I think that's one of the reasons why this is, again, just my hypothesis why Dan Quinn's defenses struggle against those groups.
For people wondering if there's a recent example, Clint Kubiak just a couple weeks ago runs a lot of this, and they hung 38, and it could have been more in that game. So it's very recent to many years ago in a different organization, but it has kind of been fairly consistent throughout. We'll see if they can find some answers to the test. Should be noted, you mentioned Kyle and Dan working together. LaFleur was on that staff with Dan in Atlanta. McDaniel was on that staff with Dan in Atlanta. So Kyle's not the only guy with that institutional knowledge. All right, Logan, enjoy your trip in Madrid. I know it's very, very busy, but when you get back here, we'll get on a little bit more of a traditional schedule for Take Command. Get some Z's and eat something good over there, man. Yeah,
man, thanks. I appreciate it, Grant. Always good seeing you, buddy, and hopefully we get this dub this weekend. What do you think?
They need to. 5 straight losses. It has not been fun. And if nothing else, let's talk about a very competitive football game that comes down to the wire.
Let's do that.
After 4 losses in a row where you're losing by 20, fans are angry. Wolves are at the door, and understandably so. All right, for Logan, I'm Grant saying so long. We will be here after the game on Sunday as you finish up your breakfast right around noon. I'll be breaking the game down with Kedrick Golston, getting you ready for the rest of the day in the NFL, and then we'll have Tuesday, Thursday pods next week. Thanks for checking us out on Take Command.